we are very glad that Rochelle is in our midst. Rochelle is a friend, of course. I mean, she is a fantastic writer. Uh, uh, More importantly, she's from Iowa. What is that?
Charles
Literary.
Wallace.
Yeah, Charles Wallace Fellow, and uh, uh, nominated for Rabindranath Tagore Literary Award, and wrote books after books. And today, she's going to talk about her recent book, Bombay Hangovers. And yes, beautiful, beautiful. And the book got published by Vishwakarma Publications, that is in Pune. And so Rochelle is going to come to Pune and going to launch the book formally when everything becomes normal. And we are going to cheer up for her. So that is the introduction, Rochelle. So how would you like to
Thank you, Arun, so much. And I'm so happy to be in the midst of Pune Writers Group because it's with fellow writers and it's fun to talk about the art and craft of writing because you all are writing so much yourselves and beautiful writings. So it's fun. So I think we can leave it open in a way that I'm just going to talk a little bit about the book, but then please, share questions on the book itself or the stories in it or how we write, what are y'all writing. So we could just have this very wonderful open table discussion on short story, the form of short stories. To begin with, I'll just take, I think, 10 minutes or 5 minutes just to introduce this book. So when I wrote this book, it wasn't a book project. Okay, so the first story was written in 2005. It was the Metamorphosis of Joe Pereira when I was kind of newly a short story writer. And the last story was written in 2015. And this wasn't a conscious book project, but when I was looking at shamelessly at my overspilling desktop, thinking, what do I do with, what if it crashes? I need to print before it crashes. And then I was like, okay, let's get something condensed into a project. I found that these stories, 16 stories, kind of had a thread. They all belong to the city of Bombay. And they could be placed together in a short story collection. Now, the short story form itself is the first form I came to when I began writing. I think I've mentioned this earlier also at the group. This was a form I kind of broke ice with when I was became a creative writer. Poetry and free verse was an accidental detour. And Haibun was a conscious curiosity as to what is this prose poetry form. In between somewhere, I wrote a novella and I wrote a speculative novel, which went nowhere because speculative wasn't doing that great in those days. And then I went to realism because that was my other genre. And a novel and screenplay is my current platforms on which my train has stopped, the journey of my train. But a short story will always be one of the forms that is very interesting to me because you could tell so much of, an entire lifetime of a character. And you could tell of multi-characters. I don't believe that, a short story only has to follow one character on one journey with two side characters and one side plot or bend. I believe you could do anything with a short story as long as you balance the tell and the show modes. Okay, so we know what is the tell and the show modes is when you describe or the unfurling of something, it's the show mode and you don't tell it. So I think as long as you can balance that, because the short story format has only, a minimum of say 3,000 words, a maximum of before it becomes a novella, I think even 10, 12,000, I think 15,000 ke baad it becomes a novella. Closer to that, I think 10, 20,000 is a real novella. So long short stories are another intermediate form. So I think as long as, if I'm talking of an average short story is like, say 4,000 words or, like 5,000 words to 2,500 words. In that frame, if you could get everything captured of what you wanted to tell, a short story form becomes very brilliant and poignant because it conveys so much in such a short time. It's just one sitting of reading and you convey so much. And of course, if you look at it very parallelly, a short story can be adapted into a short film, but sometimes it can be actually enriched to a full feature length film as well. Very rarely episodic, because now I'm also thinking, conversion or adaptation. That sense, I'm not saying these stories have to be that, but I think now hopping between frames, okay, what can be adapted, or how long does a spine of a story move to have it episodic or not. But I feel the short story gives you this beautiful window. It has got a lot of like regional short stories are very well supported. Okay, like in all regions of India, you'll have very proper magazines and publications. But the Indian short story is not that supported. We don't have independent short story anthologies. And world over also, when I talk to international short story writers, I was just recently a participant at AWP, that is that American conference. So we had it virtually, where I was speaking to these writers. They themselves said they didn't find that much of support. So I think short story, again, like poetry, follows the same fate of not having a niche readership, but not having as much support as it requires to thrive. So this book has 16 short stories, and when I have to sometimes simplistically say, I say that each story follows one train station on the western line of the city. Okay, so there's a story in Mahim, there may be a story in Bandra, there's a story in Borivali, there's a story in Kalyan, Thane, and sometimes it's just probably to pin and peg an event to the city, because you use city motifs like Dhobi Ghat, or you use a Mahalakshmi race course, or you might use say a signal, a traffic signal at Mahim, or you may speak of Hill Road. But beyond that, beyond its geographic milestones, it moves on to be stories of the characters in a city that is teeming, according to me, like ants and bees, industrious as ever, where we are connected underneath by only one kinship of sweat, which is the good sweat of mehnat. Okay, so it's the mehnat that connects the city, and it also breaks down class, it breaks down, for me, caste, it breaks down religion, because toil is something, and sweat and toil is something that unifies you, because sabko mehnat karna hai. Not only because Bombay is an aspirational city, but you kind of come here to the karma bhumi of self-actualization. At least that is what I thought when I came from a satellite town, Kalyan, which is not far away from Bombay, but it is still not Bombay. So when I had my little aspirations of the city of Bombay, this was the karma bhumi. This was the land of self-actualization, the land of aspiration. Now, when I reach the city, it's like a different story. It's like Kafka's castle. You reach the castle and you're like, where's the castle? So you realize it was not about the aspirational city or the aspirations of the city, but the aspirations in yourself, because the horizons kept shifting. So it was your, deep ambition and aspirations that is not vanquished in the city, because the city is only a geographical space. So, when we say aspirational city, city of aspirations, city of dreams, the dreams are still within us, and they continue within us, and the horizons keep shifting. So uh, there are different stories here, and while many of the themes that get covered are feminism, because I'm always a woman in the city. I can never forget that I'm a woman. Even if I want to forget, the world and the city will never let you forget that you're a woman in this. For good and for bad, it will never let you forget you're a woman. I would have otherwise chosen to be an atom, if you ask me, because an atom can see everything neutrally, and they can see a lot more of history and socio-politics, and you can just write. But it can never be that. I'm in the avatar of a woman in the city. So a lot of times my POVs are women, but a lot of time the POVs are men. And Arithmetic of Breast, the first story that had a lot of resonance in my self-published book, Arithmetic of Breast and Other Stories, it was one of the most resonant stories by women and men readers, and because it was speaking about the breast. Okay, and I must tell you this also, just to get you to have that smile. The first line of this story, of this book, in Arithmetic of Breast, uh, see, I chose to keep it here because it was a very resonant story from my self-published book. So I wanted it to be the first book, like a shagun, you're breaking a coconut. But when some new readers read the first line, they are like, Naren always had a semi hard on when Monica was around. And they're like, no, 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 this book is not for us. This book is not for us. And I'm like, no, just get over your reader barrier and just read it. Don't prejudge a book, from its first cover, from its first story. Read through it. It's not a book about, it's not a story about sexuality at all, even though it employs everything about sexuality, everything about the breast, everything about the female body. But that was my response to probably being so aware of myself in a woman's body, especially when you're harassed on the street, that you want to give back, you want to punch, and sometimes you would just punch back through a story. We are our only punching bags are our words and our ideas and our ink, and we use those punching gloves very well. You have to use them well. So this first story is that. And then there are other stories with different themes. I have a story on caste in Pyramid, where I've actually really not even been metaphorical about pyramid and caste in Gokulashtami's Human Pyramid. Or there is a story about salad, which starts from Kalyan and goes to Goa, and it follows roots of what is roots, what is native place. Then there's a story. There are stories on the sensoria of the city, like noise or like perfume, which is smell, and whether it is the sight or the sounds. Because I felt when I was so much of a citizen in Bombay, I was attacked by its sensoria. Okay, it seeped to me in all five senses. So when I wrote with all five senses. And as the Japanese poetry forms say, the sixth sense is memory. Now, I don't know whether that also played a role, but maybe the title Hangovers has a bit of memory, because I am still intoxicated with the city and I still have a hangover. Now, I would ask all the drinkers in the room, how is this possible? You could have a hangover while still being intoxicated. But I think that is what the city does to you. It even seeps through its characters, because you meet so many people. I think like Pune, you meet a lot of people from different walks of life. And I think for me, when I became a writer, I wasn't that great a reader, because I was a commerce student and an MBA in marketing. So I wasn't a literature student. I hadn't read much, but I had read a lot of people as books. And I still read people like books. So I know them. I instinctively know them by each word they use or don't use. I know people by their silence and their speech, by what they hold back and what they speak. I know people. So people were my books. So I was a reader of the world. Here in Bombay, the characters that come about, are so quizzical. They're so unusual. They're so beautiful. Even in their ordinariness, they're so extraordinary and magical that you think, what this person is, what is his life's journey, or what is her life's journey? Kahan se aaye ho, kahan ja rahe ho? And that question is a collision, a juxtaposition with you, because you are always asking yourself, Arun, you said that at the beginning, an existential question. We ask ourselves that beautifully, where are we coming from? Where are we going? What are we made of? What do we want to consent being made of? So while you're asking your questions, personal existential questions, you're looking at these beautiful people, these unusual people, these atrang people, and you're asking the same of them. And somewhere then they become characters in your book. And because you're following their journeys or their alternate journeys, and it converges with other things. As writers, we all theme crazy, aren't we? We don't know that, but if you just look at just sit at the edge of the river and diagnose how you think, you'll know that your obsessions have themes. Some of them will be very permanent footprints. Like for me, feminism is one. I think that will never end until I end. But for me, there are other themes, like in one of the stories, not this one in this book, but in another one I'm doing on insurgency and identity. It's only a transient theme. I don't think I'm going to be like writing many books or many stories on that. It's only one of them. So sometimes themes are transient. They're like visitors. You want to understand once ki kya hai ye? Kya hai iska jhol kya hai? ठीक है? But not all the time. But there are some themes which you constantly, it's a recurrent spring. You it never ends. You are always asking questions on those. So those are those recurrent themes, and they are also important because they're going to mark you out as a writer. They are going to color your ink, and you must be aware of those as well, because they are so reflective of your own soul searching that's going on. So so these have themes of, wherein, like, for example, yesterday one of the college professors was very intrigued by a story called Euphoria in this book, wherein she said it was an unlikely friendship of three characters who come from different classes. So one is a CEO, one is a dosa maker, and one is a Muslim pub bouncer. So she was like, why did you think of this story? Because I like the story very much, but why did you think of it? And I said, the same reason, because you resonate with it. Because when you are connected with mehnat, you break through class, you break through so many things when your journey is the same, even if you are rich or poor, you're going the same way. So going the same way is very important in kinship and co-journey. So my characters also are as irrational as people. They are as madcap, they are quirky, they are disguised, they are repressed, suppressed, they break through, they have agency, they have everything that you probably see, witness in your own life, experience. So that's it. Yeah, that's a kind of introduction of the book.
Thank you so much. And I believe I actually kind of have a few questions, but I think that half of them got covered already. And anyone, I mean, Kinjal, Shati, Sumit, anyone, whenever you feel like, asking a question, Girija, Prita, Ruchita, Helen.
Yes.
Rochelle, I've bought your book about Bombay Hangovers, and I've read through 2 chapters of it so far, 2 stories. And I was astonished that how you got into the brain of somebody else, and it seems very plausible and seems like, yes, probably this is how people think. But I've read the first 2 stories, and it's true, you get fixated on a particular thought somewhere early in life, and then you see everything through those tainted windows. And I had never thought of it that way, and I was really astonished that how you got into the.
And you're talking of the first 2 stories, that is Arithmetic of Bliss and Pafu.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, how did you enter their heads and see the world through their tainted windows?
So if I have to answer your, first of all, thanks for reading those 2 stories. So Parfum was a notable entry at the Disquiet International Literary Prize. So I thought, it took its chakkar to Lisbon and came back. I wish I could have gone there, but because Disquiet is pretty known for its, I think its residencies and retreats and stuff like that. I would have liked to do a lot more, like have Bhelpuri at Lisbon and come back. But if I talk of the second story, Swati, Parfum was, so many things, because Bombay, or a city, is about its smells as well. And when I mean smells, it's not all the bad smells of the city, but even the smell of sunset, or the smells of flamingos in flight, or this whole idea of the smell of monsoonal rain that drips from the leaves, because you don't only see or witness the rains, you also feel them through so many ways, like goosebumpy and all. So keeping your senses open, Parfum was about smells of a city, but then I went after the perfumer Rusi, and I just wanted to explore. See, so much of my story writing process is that I don't know where I'm going. I have the beginning ingredients, like I have the character, or maybe I have some thing in the basket, like a theme, or an image, or something like that, or a place, in this case, Pedder Road. And then I set out on the journey to follow Rusi and see where he goes. What is he after? What is his Rusi after? And Rusi is like us, because he's after the quintessential perfume. We are after the quintessential story, or the quintessential poem. Probably that will define our whole existential question to us. Yeah. And perhaps I feel that is what is the signature of a writer, when they are remembered by that one poem. Why that one poem? Because it answers everyone else's existential question. So I was looking at Rusi, because he wants to find the quintessential perfume. And then I wonder at the end of the story, what is the quintessential perfume? And then if you've read the story, I'm not going to give up spoilers, but you understand is the quintessential perfume. And Arithmetic of Breast, as I've already mentioned, it came from my Purana book of stories. It is a very essential story for me. And I feel amused when people only read the title and they're like, okay. Because, there is this whole fear people have about breasts. Because how can we say breasts? I mean, I once witnessed even people not saying breast cancer. They said cancer. And I'm like, of what? And they were like, of, woman wala cancer. I'm like, kya? And at the same time, the breast is also molested. It's like, it's put through everything harsh and good. And it's fixation. It has a Bollywood fixation. It has everything. Women are obsessed about their own anatomy. Breast is an important milestone for pubescent girls, of the sizes of it. When I had once gone to an Asian country in its shopping department, I saw only the lingerie section full of padded bras. Okay. And I never saw that in India. So I was like, do I need to feel proud at this place in a department store? Is this the place of pride? But I'm saying, we are obsessed with anatomy, and we do violent stuff to it, and we cannot say the word. So I was like, I'm going to fix this, because I've come across enough of men, women, children, eunuchs obsessed with breast, and breast means so many things. It would mean something very different to a hijra. It would mean something very different for a transsexual person. It would be different for a woman, man, small, big sizes. There were these sizes, and there are appreciations in different of a beauty, definitions of beauty across history, of what was the anatomy of a woman to equalize it to beauty. So in today's day, it is this kind of beauty is beauty. That time it was that. So this is part of anatomy, and I wanted to reclaim that space, but I also wanted to do some mischief. While I reclaimed that narrative of a female anatomy, I wanted it to be from the point of view of a male. So that's when I had serious fun. But then that's what a short story writer should be able to do now, have fun.
I was about to ask you that
Yeah.
when you were writing, right? And I mean, when I write from a woman's point of view, most of the time I have a lot of self-doubt, because I don't experience their life. Generally, I take help of my friends, and I try to understand their point of view. And I ask them some silly questions, and they answer me. And from there, I try to understand, where they stand and how they stand. That self-doubt is always there. So when you are writing from the point of view of Narayan, so did you have, how did you know?
No, so now see this question, no, Arun, though it is so simple, it's not, it's tricky, because as women, we have been subjected to the male gaze. Yeah. So we have been offended by the male gaze, sometimes and many times cherished by it and happy with it. Okay, both things. But we don't discuss in Indian society sexual desire for women. We only talk of sexual safety against sexual violence, because that is so rampant that we can't talk of sexual desire. And we also fear, you speak of sexual desire, you will immediately be tagged as something else. All those other grand hashtags which are going to be demolished or are demolished. So having said that, when I would feel both, sometimes offended by male gaze, especially when it's pinpointed at a location in your body, and sometimes also happy about it, cherishing that male gaze. I did see a lot of men. I started thinking about men and breast, and I thought about all those men who say, we are a breast man. We're not the bum man. We're the breast man. And then I remember a classmate in school where I was first exposed to how he was fascinated by the breast, because he's sitting on the last bench, and while there was chemistry lectures going on and all, I also went to sit on the last bench. I was a first ranker, but I don't know why. I like last benches. You got most of the dope from there. So he was actually under the table looking at this graphic magazine with this biggest, blasted bust. And he was saying, ye breast hai, ye breast hai. And that was the first time I was like, okay. And we were all growing then, right? You know, we were attaining puberty. I think that was the first, that was bookended as the first time I came across this. And throughout my womanhood, I have come across this whole fixation of breast, you know, and sometimes I have hung out with my male friends, you know, when they have been giving their 10 on 10s, whether it's offensive or not, you know, this 7 p.m. rum conversations wherein they are doing their scoring and you're like, asses, you know, should I score you? You know, like, do you want me to start? Do you want us women to start scoring you? Or maybe we are already doing that, you know, but it's this whole scoring business, you know, wherein offensive as it might be, I started watching the psychology of this. And I was not hateful of Naren for being obsessed with the breast. I was like, okay, let me put every man's obsession with the breast in Naren. Let him be the whole beholder and holder of this obsession. And let me start the story like that. Let me see where it goes. So I did it to the point wherein there was one male reader who came and said, we are not so obsessed with the breast. We are not so obsessed as you make it. I said, I'm so sorry to offend, you know. We've been offended so much. I'm so sorry.
Maybe he was not offended. Maybe he was just informing you. That's anyway. I mean, so that when you are hearing them, your male friends, you know, they are obsessing, and so are you hearing or are you asking questions also?
See, it just depends. I'll tell you something. I'm not you know, a hyper feminist, so I don't get annoyed by every joke that's cracked. But of course, it cannot go beyond a point wherein it's seriously degrading a woman or it's degrading children. But to a certain extent, I understand a joke. We all are people of the society, and I believe you know, men can be as feminist as women can be misogynist. So it's not necessary. I do know to keep that right balance of, so I don't question them, but I will mention it quietly in a way that, hey, this is going, it's crossing a line, you know, like I can't tolerate dying children jokes. I can't tolerate it. So I would leave the room.
So I mean, so you were observing them, as you said that, you know, you observe people like books, right? And you observing them and you're trying to, you know, in your head, you are trying to make, you know, how, if he's saying this, how he must be thinking.
Yes.
That is the way.
Yes. And like I have this friend of mine who would say, you know, I wear my goggles during the corporate lunch break. My goggle pehanta. I say, oh, ogling behind the goggling. I really love that. Simple things, it's, you know, men would tell me, ye main karta hu. You know, this is their ritual. You know, we have writing rituals. So I am definitely very interested in the themes of infidelity, in sexuality, in how much it is repressed and how much it is expressed in society. Because not only is it about society, but it is about personal agencies.
Very true.
And it's very gray. It's very gray as to how people view sexuality, whether male, female. You know, I'm actually going to be writing another story later on. It might be a full-fledged novel on the female gaze. You know, the whole like go whole hog on the female gaze. Enough with the male gaze now.
We had a discussion on, not a long discussion, but a little bit of discussion about one article one of our writers got published in Economic Times, where it was, Kinjal. Do you remember?
Which one, the Kinshuk one?
Kinshuk one.
Hindu business line.
Hindu business line, you know, and it was, I believe, you know, his proposition was very decently straightforward. It was not very complicated. Let's do this kind of a thing. And I was wondering, you know, I was thinking about, you know, is that it is not so simple. Sex is not so simple. It's absolutely tricky.
Yes.
And we have been writing about it for, I don't know, now thousands of years or something.
Yes.
Not writing probably, but telling stories, and now writing recently for maybe 200 or 500 years, and still.
Yes. We still face, right? We face a lot of different perspectives.
We are not anywhere. I mean, we are still as helpless before it, and as we find it as mysterious. I mean, at least I find it as mysterious and as to be curious about it. Sometimes I hate it and sometimes I love it. The whole thing is too complex.
Yes, yes, and it's also so much about societal perception, right? I mean, how much of it? I did a lot of this exploring in my poem skirt or in poems. In poetry, it was easier to express the whole dichotomy of sexuality. Yeah. So, yeah. But it's going to be that's what this is going to be like a never-ending theme that you can keep exploring, because there's so much to explore in this, so much to question and answer.
Rochelle, who are your favorite short story writers? I mean, do you?
See, earlier I used to read a lot of international, stories like William Trevor's, Haruki Murakami's, Tessa Hadley, and even some of Manohar Shetty's prose earlier times. But I used to read, I think I used to podcast myself into New Yorker fiction. So that would be my staple diet. So a lot of short stories came from there. Then, of course, the Nabokovs and the Chekhovs that happened. Then I went even to Indian translated poetry, translated short stories, which were not, I would say, the best English translations, but not bad, where you understood the regional flavor. I have read less of Indian English short stories, but I don't even think that there's too much of it, because there's little of it in syndicated columns of magazines. So I depended more on international, all the international short story writers, Grace Pally, all of them. Ek ek ko pakda hai.
Shankar is here. Shankar is here, and William Trevor is one of his favorite short story writers. He's quite. And because you mentioned Nabokov, and I will tell you something funny that happened. Is that I'm right now I'm reading Lolita again.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then I reading Lolita again, and I read Arithmetic of what is the exact name? The Arithmetic of Breasts. Okay.
Oh, you said it. Okay.
Okay. All right. So I couldn't find the name. So I wanted to be correct. That's why I don't have it. So anyway, and I had a very curious feeling, one hand, the way he was going. This is that Lolita again, a love story, but what a curious, pathetic, interesting love story.
Yes.
And yours is too. I mean, how Naran starts and how Naran ends. I mean, he's a great guy. I mean,
no, but I congratulate you in reading the end. You reached the end.
Why not?
No, because many readers don't reach the end. They stop at the beginning.
Oh, come on! I mean, that's not the point. I might be able to just tell you, just to show off a little bit. Okay, so it was so interesting when you started the story with breasts, and it's fantastic. And then you go to topology. I said, this is even more fantastic. And you not only go to topology, you actually you discuss in detail. That means you have studied it, you have researched it, and then you go to knot theory.
Right.
And I remember that this knot theory and DNA stranding, right?
Yes.
And that knot theory is, you must have read it, but anyway, I'm going to mention it, and please tell me that if you know it already.
Right.
Is that it is one of the theoretical mathematical work that has been done by Professor Aumann, Professor Robert Aumann. Yes. And there was a story that, that work he did and forgotten because it was a theoretical mathematical work. And later, his grandson called up. He was probably in Israel, and grandson was in America in medical school, and he calls up and says that, please explain that knot theory to me. And grandfather says, why? And he says that, no, there is this complication about this DNA, and we need to know that, it follows this one, so we need to know that.
Yeah.
And Professor Aumann came to Pune. Professor Aumann came to Pune. Okay. He was invited to a leadership, some kind of a seminar or something at Symbiosis, but at that campus, Lavale campus. And during the question
your entire following up of that knot theory. You have an experience like with topology. Okay.
I said, this is fantastic that a short story writer, and generally what happens, right? When we start writing, we become very linear about it, right? We become
Right,
very
right.
focused about it. Oh, I'm going to write this,
Yes, yes.
right? And so this is my beginning, this is my middle, this is my
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, Arun, this is a very astute observation, and thank you for that, because it's been a while since I wrote that story, so it's been a while since I researched on topology. So I must say this, for the short story, for the writers we are, that when I write about the professions of characters, I don't only like to say, oh, they went to office, yeah, and they came back with a briefcase. No, what the hell did they do there, man? Because they were living lives there too. So I would like to round it off with a, 360 degree की थोड़ा बहुत बताओ आजकल तो in especially in writing episodic writing for web series, you're supposed to tell us a lot more of what that office world was. In the older stories, whether you saw it visually or you read it, they went to work, they came back, was enough if you were covering the milieu of home. But I felt, no, I think a character is as complete as a person. If you must know what your friend did in their profession, just like they might tell you what they did in their bedrooms, I must know what the character did in the office or in their workplace as much as he or she did in the bedroom, if I can, because that's the rounding of a character. Yeah.
But does it not kind of worry you a little bit? Because I was about to ask you about this, maybe probably it is a little bit of craft question, right? So I know that cannot be similar every time, but generally what happens when you are writing a short story? Do you know of course you know the beginning because you are writing it, right? And do you know the middle? Do you know the ending? How does it happen?
See, sometimes, very rarely do I know the end, very rarely. Like this has happened, like just, let's say if I wrote 50 short stories totally in my life up until now, half of them being magic realism or speculative, half of them are realism, which you would find in these two books. But I think only in two stories I knew the end. So that means the idea came full baked to me. Generally, I know the beginning and a bit of where it might be going, here or there. And then it is up to the explorative curiosity in me as the writer to just go hunting after that. You pick the scent of that animal and you're just on the trail. And you enjoy being lost, Arun, as much as you enjoy finding. Sometimes it is nice to be blocked for days. You're just lost in the woods and you're like, this is not making sense, yaar. ये यहाँ क्यों है? मैं यहाँ क्यों हूँ? What's going on? Is this the story, or should I just move here, or should I do this? And then you persevere, because that's what you have to do as a seeker. And finally you get a breakthrough through the woods, and it's a journey, it's your journey, it's a parallel journey. You're finding something about yourself that you don't know. You're finding something about life that you have no idea about, but you find it through a character, and eventually you find a truth. And that's when you stop. And that's the end. So I've always found it.
So a couple of things, okay? Yeah. Sorry. Anybody else about it? Kinjal, would you like to ask a question? Yes.
Which was a follow-up of the one. The first one is a follow-up of the one Arun said about you writing from a male gaze perspective. So there is, there's a lot of discussion around me, and I'm just trying to find my way about this question of appropriation, like writing from a point of view which you can never own fully.
Right.
And so then how much justice, or what are the strategies, or how do you handle or manage that in your writing when you're writing from a perspective which you will never have? Like writing from a male perspective is something which I will never get to do in the originality firsthand.
Correct.
So how does that work? Is there a problem with appropriation there, or or me writing something from a perspective of a less privileged person?
Right.
So what can I do to get that into my writing? Should I even begin writing from that perspective? And if I do, then what should I do to own that or make it more authentic? And my second question is, because we were discussing beginning of the stories, another thing I've heard is that if you begin the story well, then you can complete it. If there's a problem with the first paragraph or the first sentence, then everything will fall apart. So
Right.
Whether you know the ending or not is another thing, but it's the beginning, I feel, where
Right.
holds
Right.
a lot of uh, what comes next.
Right.
So are you very sure when you begin with the thing? What is your approach when you begin something?
You have asked some smashing questions, Kinjal. I should send some bouquets only for these questions. Two delicious questions. I'll try to synopsize them, but very quickly. But because like I don't want to cover a lot of time. So the first question or debate on appropriation is quite an old one right now. In the sense, it's been happening for a while. This debate internationally, in India, everywhere. So what I glean from it finally, because every writer is going to take home what they want, right? I mean, finally. So what I understand is that if you were to only write on your point of view, because that's the only material you have with great faithfulness, then you could only write memoir. Or you could write some poetry, but you cannot write anything more. You cannot take any other genre, because every other story will require another character other than you. So what are you going to do about those? Whether it's children, now you can say that I misappropriated innocence. I misappropriated childhood, because I misappropriated animals, because there's animal rights also as well, right? It's not just children's rights. So then in that case, you couldn't write any other character, because everything would be an appropriation. Then you cannot create story worlds, and you cannot write stories at all. So I don't think this would work for a storyteller at all, then, because we would only be writing memoirs or non-fiction with a lot of statistics in place. um, I think it is to do with empathy and sensitivity. If you can write about any character in the world, any character, whether if you are privileged and you're writing of a not so privileged person, if you're female or male writing about the other, if you're writing about anybody, anything, as long as you're doing it with as much sensitivity and empathy to the core as you can, that if you were those people, would you have represented yourself in this story like this? If you pass that internal litmus test, you should, I feel, as a writer, you should go and write your stories. Otherwise, we would not have stories, actually. If we worried about appropriation, we would only have memoirs. So this would be a library of memoirs. So I think please go ahead and write as much. I also, when I'm writing, of course, the debate of appropriation came much later. So when I was this bindas writer, there was no appropriation debate happening anywhere in any literature festival. There was no Lionel Shriver. There was nobody, actually. I just bindas wrote, "Arey, ye character mujhe pasand hai, Bidu, chal likhte hain iske upar." So you just went and wrote. Finally, you came from this badmash Bombay, right? You just went and wrote. You said, "Chal picha karte hain." And you were also a gossip monger, like all our previous generation of parents and grandparents were fiction writers. Only they were fiction writers on the nukkad, thoda wo chai wai pee ke. Now uncle log 7 baje ko old monk pee ke fiction bolte hain. So we know those people also. They didn't say ki अरे मैं ना neighbor का affair appropriate कर रहा हूँ, कर तो रहा हूँ, like कर लिया. So we never thought about all this. Appropriation came as a sophisticated debate, which is also important at some places, because it matters when you're representing Dalit voices, Adivasi voices, undervoiced, aboriginals. We do it in a stereotypical way that makes them just motifs. They're just props. Like they did it even, like I'm a Goan, so I know in the Goan community, or the Goan woman represented in Bollywood, she was always a secretary who was dumb. She was a dumb secretary with those frilly little collars. She was nothing more than that. And or she was the maid or something, like Maria is bachcho ko dekho. So we are not that, right? I can create many Mogambos, actually. I'm that Maria. So I'm not a stereotype. So we need to watch out for that they don't become just props in our story to suit a purpose. They don't become a trope. They are real people. And if we were them, we would be proud that we represented ourselves properly. So I think it is the opening of empathy that will finally quell the debate on appropriation. By all means, write on everything, as long as you pass the litmus test of empathy. That's what I have to say. And we can always talk more on that, okay? Because in case this is a longer debate. And this is, but I must say that this
No,
is the
I
debate.
just want to add. I just wanted to add that this appropriation of a Goan people was something that I faced recently when I was reading Bombay Balchao, and I
Ah.
was thinking that okay, this is or even M and the Big Home by Jerry Pinto or
Yeah,
Bombay
yeah,
Balchao. I was like, okay, this feels Goa because
yeah,
even I'm from there, and I was
right,
like, this feels Goa. This is
right.
not a stereotypical
Yes,
nanny or Koli
yes,
lady.
yes.
So yeah, so I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and even the place, Goa is always as a place represented in stereotypes. We don't call it place appropriation because the place doesn't get hurt, doesn't have a heart, but only to talk of a place as a holiday destination of drink and drugs and rave party. No, Goa is so much more. It is its history, its culture, its language, its folklore, every place. But sometimes they're just represented as these uh, flat unidimensional motives. Same with people. So I think that is what we need to really crack and bring in empathy. So this is and this is the answer even that I got recently from all these international festivals I was going through before the lockdown. The same debates were happening, and eventually you reach the point of empathy or sensitivity. About the second question, oh, there are some chat messages actually coming. I think there's a lot of fun going on here. It's not Josh. Okay, there's a lot of fun going on. I'm always curiously interested in the fun going on at the back channels. Yeah. So yeah. So about the second question, which is beautiful question. I think so. Yes, the beginnings usually they say have all the seeds of the tree in it. That's what they say, right? You should have the seed of the tree in the first acts. The beginnings have everything. They have the setting so that you have the payoffs, the setup and the payoffs. So I think, yeah, if you have the beginning right, instinctively, you will reach a good, fulfilling end. And sometimes if, let's say you don't reach it, okay, like you have a good beginning, you explore the middle, you go till the end, something is not, you're not happy. Uh, Rely on that instinct. Maybe when you edit it in your, let's say after a month or two, you might excavate more or go deeper, and it might be fulfilling. Very rarely, sometimes you would also have to add a little more laces and little more textures to the beginning sometimes. Yeah. So, but generally go by that moment. They say that about haiku, right? When you read a haiku, you should feel an moment. I feel that's the same thing when you write a story that you finally think, okay, I've edited it. This is it. Like, after many moons of editing, this is the story I want to tell you. You will feel a ring in your heart. Like it'll be that, okay, I'm done. And then you shoot, submit. And they shoot back. And then it wins an award. That's the funniest, bizarre part of the submissions. Then it gets rejected in 10 places, the 11th is an award. And you're like, ye kaise ho gaya? But yeah, thank you for these questions. And all the best. What are you writing these days, Kinjal? Are you writing short stories?
I had written some horrible short stories,
Oh.
and I'm trying to salvage them. So right now, since a couple of months, I'm just editing some old short stories and poems. I have not written, unfortunately, I've not written anything new since a month.
Right. Okay.
A couple of months.
I was wondering, even do you all have a critique group? You all must be having a critique group that kind of critiques
Yes.
works. Yeah.
Yes.
Tomorrow at 12.
Oh, brilliant. So
Every
that
Sunday,
helps a
yeah.
lot. No? It helps a lot. Yeah. I was once part of the British Council Libraries Writers Group. So we used to critique in a similar way.
And nowadays, because we are submitting, so we just hurry up and just
Yeah.
read our piece or show our piece and say the piece, please critique them and correct them, do whatever, delete the
And that helps so much, because sometimes you don't have objectivity very quickly unless you wait. So you need quick objectivity. Yeah.
Yeah, also submitting is like getting things work done, because if there's a deadline, then a 2-year-old story will suddenly resurface and you're forced to edit it because you don't have anything else to submit.
Yes.
So I think that process is helping me. Otherwise, I was a very lazy at editing, because writing is so much fun. It gives you immediate,
absolutely.
but editing is horrible. But
yeah. And I think you should follow also the haiku approach of editing, that take off each extra word that is not required. Even though a short story doesn't complain about 575 syllable counts, get into that habit that any word that doesn't pay its tax should not belong on the page. Yeah. So.
But Rochelle, can you share a little bit of your editing process which went into this
Okay.
book?
So I think so I can tell you of an aggregate of short stories in general. Like first, when let's say I'll start from the inception. Like supposing you get an idea from anywhere. Okay, it could be a character. Sometimes it could be an image. Sometimes it could be a question. Sometimes you read weird news, and you were like, "Arey, ye to maine yahan bhi suna tha." That person also went through it. There's something going on here. And you kind of amalgamate. That doesn't matter. The inception process is I think the most fun process, because you don't have to do anything. You just have to have a tumble wash of ideas going on. Never mind from where it came. There is a process called incubation, which I would definitely stress on. It comes much before even writing, but I feel sometimes when you incubate an idea enough, you allow it its space to grow in your head before you feel it should spill on paper. It reshuffles, your brain reshuffles a lot, and that is better than copy pasting paragraphs on a document, because brains can just, like, next morning you have a new epiphany, and there sometimes you have a breakthrough, and wow. So you allow a lot of process. If you are not in a hurry or at a deadline, allow that incubation its time. Please allow it. You will know when a ghanti bajegi, when your brain says, enough now, get me on the page. This story is ready here, it's baked. Then you get it on a page. So if you're not stressed for time, please go through that process, get it on a page. So what I can only tell you what I do. I think every writer has their own techniques which they build, and every writer will have their own unique technique. But what I do is, when I write the first draft of a story, I don't worry about anything. If I just write it, so I don't worry about anything, just the way it's coming to you. Usually you catch the first line when your brain says, "Tang, I'm ready to be on page." You take the thread of that first line and you just go pulling. Yeah. So you just write. You write raw, and you keep it away. I write, sometimes I overwrite. There's something excess. I wanted to also say this, and I wanted to say that, and I wanted to say that. Say whatever you have to say, keep it away. And then I come back to, I don't go to it because I can afford that time, because I write a lot of different things. I can afford that time that it's there in the drawer or in the desktop. The story calls out to me. One morning you will wake up, or one afternoon you're just dreaming about why is life so good to me. That afternoon, and it's like, tang tang, that story is calling out. You're like, hey, that story is ready for me. And then you open it, and then you start reading it like new, like as if it's not your story, it's someone else's story. You are the editor of this anthology, and you put the specs, and you have this, this nakchada nak, and you're like, what is this bullshit? Delete, this, there. Who's written this? Can you please come here? I want to fire you right away. Or genius. All those things happen because you can't believe you wrote it. If you reach that much of distance, you've forgotten it. Self-amnesia ho gaya. You get this beautiful objectivity, and objectivity is so important, where you can just, cut, copy, paste, edit, rewrite. Ye to cliche hai mere bhai. Isko original voice mein lao. And you're like, what would I say for this? This is such a cliche. Because when I write first drafts, even cliches come out, tumbling out. And then you'll find, nah, I think I wanted to say this. No, maybe I wanted to say this. And you reach that approximation, that original voice thing. And then it is much lesser. It is 3/4 of its size, the next edit. And you're a bit happy, and then you must celebrate with coffee, wine, whatever. Okay, please don't forget to celebrate on the way. I feel we don't celebrate ourselves enough. We don't celebrate our journeys enough. And here we don't have bosses in writing who will say, come on, let me give you an appraisal. You have no one, yeah. You have to give yourself an appraisal. Jaake thoda wine pee lo. Or if Arun has given a rule ki wine nahi peena hai, then chai piyo, coffee piyo. But celebrate that little thing that, okay, I edited it. Kuch kaam kiya hai is pe. Again, I keep it away, and I come back to it only when it calls me. Unless there's a deadline which says, no, you have to submit, then I will then go after 3, 4, 5 days or a week, 2 weeks, as much as I can keep time, because I need objectivity. because I have stopped sending my short stories to my peers for critiquing. So I only depend on my objectivity and instinct. Otherwise, if you're sending it to peers, then you can send it immediately. And then be ready for the bouquets and the brickbats. and learn a lot, be very hungry to improve and enrich your story. Your main goal is only to enrich your story. So there's one more thing which I want to say, which I don't think in this group anyone has, but I still want to mention it. Ego comes in the way of knowledge. And if you even detect a little cell of it, throw it right out of the door. And you can pick it up later when you're promoting your work. But when you're creating and when there's knowledge around, there should be no ego. Just keep learning. Yeah.
For you, is it 2 weeks to have that distance?
Yes, generally 2 weeks. What about you, Arun?
Oh, for me, probably 1 year.
1 year?
Yeah, it becomes very difficult because I have seen that when I go back,
Okay.
then only I can become that neutral. It becomes very difficult.
Wow. What about what do you do in that 1 year? Do you do other writing?
Yes, other writings.
Okay.
Yeah, other writings. Or maybe I was very satisfied with the story.
Okay.
At that time.
Okay.
Now I'm reading it again.
Okay.
I said, what crap? Let's edit it.
Okay. 1 year is a lot only if you want to manage deadlines. Otherwise, it's okay.
Yes. Now probably it will be difficult. Previously, I was not submitting, so it was not that difficult.
One way of detaching yourself to gain objectivity is to work on multiple projects. So then you automatically start separating your projects.
This is where I would come and ask you a question, but before that, I would know if Sumit or Helen or Prita or anyone.
Can I ask?
Yes, please.
Hi, Rochelle.
Hi.
This is my first time actually seeing you. I do remember, I think in our group, you probably had a couple of more sessions with the PWG.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know about your book at all, but I just wanted to say, without sounding condescending at all, that I have not admired any author as much as I have admired you when you have spoken so, I think, with such exuberance and without any, I would say, veil of, kind of masking whatever the back process is of for a writer. And so I really appreciate that.
Thank
And
you.
having said that, I just want to ask you, because we all have gone through our amount of age in our lifetime right now, and the way a writer writes, and especially in the earlier, in the very beginning, you had mentioned about the senses and the memories and the sixth sense of how do you first of all, there's so much experiences that we have on the daily, but to kind of hold on to that when the time for writing comes, and then to put it in the paper, also with the objective of doing so much of research where you're not well versed with the subject, like you mentioned about the arithmetic of breasts, where you talked about topology, or you talked about the knot theory, or whatever it is. Not saying that you don't know about it, but me personally, if I have to talk about it, those ideas, when they come in your head, how do they even make like that little beeline of, if you are not aware of a subject, how does it come to you in the thought process of writing, is what I wanted to ask you.
First and foremost, thank you, Preeta, for all those encouraging words. I think, these are the moments that you cherish, So I'm going to hold on.
I'm going to buy your book now, because I just, it's so beautiful the way you were describing it, and the rest of them who have read it.
Yeah, but I'm going to cherish this moment. Thank you so much for those encouraging words. Yeah. So your question, so at least in short stories, what I know is when you have done incubating, I believe that tongue, that the brain tells you, come on, you're ready now. You're just ready. Enough of thinking or shuffling, you're ready. I sit in one go and write it, because I don't, because it's a short story, so you can do it in one sitting. If you can read a short story in one sitting, you can write it in one sitting, at least the draft one. So even if it takes me 5 hours at a stretch, maximally, let's say I've written 12,000 words, I will sit at it in one go and write it. So I have the whole thing with me. And if there are gaps in research, I will just write RE, bracket, open bracket, close. Matlab research is later. Sometimes I will use cliches and I will underline it as I'm writing along, because I know this is not what I wanted to say, but I can't find that real thing right now. And sometimes I will clearly say, check. Not to check this later. So I will make these little notations, but I will continue with the flow of the character
Writing.
and the story. Yeah, don't leave the character's trail and the story, because what you're handling something as a writer then in that sitting is so important. You are balancing all the components of storytelling, and I'm telling you, it's magical. We have not yet found a book that can tell you everything that a storyteller goes through when they're writing that story, because both things are magical. The process of writing or storing and the story and the characters and this whole magic that you will write this, everything is magical at that time. It's not articulated in any book until today, because it's too magical. We come from the oldest tradition of sitting around the bonfire as short story tellers, oral storytellers. We come from there. So we don't have these, these techniques and how-tos. So when you're writing, when you're in that flow, you just go and write it till the very end. Try to see that you have no interruption.
Also, I remember you mentioning that you have not read as much because you were not a reader. You became a writer first. What was that process? Because everybody says to become a good writer, you need to be a good reader, but I'm not. I mean, it all depends on your own personal perspective on life and how you, like you say, how people are like books, and you kind of take them in like that, with their silences and volumes and all those things that you were talking about. It was very fascinating to me, because I'm the same way. What I'm missing right now most in the pandemic is just sitting in a bar and watching other people, or sitting in a station and watching other people, and just kind of thinking about the stories in my head as to what is their life. Just random stuff.
I so get you.
And when you mention Bombay, I think it hits very close to home, because I have worked there for 5 years. I have had relatives there, so I've visited. So Bombay is like a living person for me. It's like I don't know how to say that, but if you start writing, like they say Bombay is a vibe, but it's also like a living organism. It changes so much from day to night.
Absolutely.
And so that is something which I still like. It's so close to my heart. I have not lived there for a long time, but anytime anybody mentions Bombay, I'm like, I love you. So I just kind of fall like that. But how was the process when you started writing, especially not being in a background of literature and not having the reader's perspective? How was that for you? Like, I'm not even sure when you started the journey. I actually do not know anything about you, sadly, which is going to change now. So
no, but it's good, because there's not much to know about me. I'm like a very new writer, so to speak. I just have 3-4 books.
No.
So I wish I was Ruskin born. No, I'm pretty much new on this journey, Preeta, very, very new. So there's not much also to know about me. You'll find me in 3 books. But having said that, these questions are, I so resonate with what you say, that you would sit in a cafe and you would observe people, and these people trigger so many thoughts in you, because I so understand, because I wasn't, it wasn't like I was, I didn't read much. I read a bit here and there, but I was not an avid reader, like they say, for a writer to be. And I came to writing as a writer with few lines, those sentences that keep knocking on your door and you want to write them down. You want to scribble them somewhere and you don't know what they are. For very long, I didn't know that the rhythmic lines I wrote were poetry. Somebody had to tell me, because I had saved them as untitled. There were these extra rhythmic things, which are like a residue of stories. Till somebody said, are you a poet? And I'm like, no, I'm not. And they were like, just go and check. And I found a lot of untitled, one, untitled 2. And they were poems. And so it was that surprising. So I think I understood the modes of writing, and I struggled with writing. And after I struggled enough, I realized I'm falling short. You feel thirsty. There's one thing that happens. It's just like lactating. They say that if you are breastfeeding, again, I go to the breast. No, but I don't go. I go for a reason. When you breastfeed, you are very thirsty. So I feel when you're creating, you're very thirsty because you want to research, you want to know things, but you also want to understand the craft, the style of other writers. That's when I started reading. So but it was because I wanted to write and express, and I felt, do I have enough of a worldview? Do I have enough of vocabulary? Do I understand the world? What's my stance on the world? Because when I was working in the corporate world, I didn't require to have that much amount of worldview. You needed to be deadline adhering. That's all you needed to be. So you needed to be a cog in the wheel. So you're a cog in the wheel. You're not asked what's your view on Black Lives Matters. So you don't have a worldview on that. Because you don't have a worldview on that, you don't have a worldview on what caste is, really, really speaking. And what is your view on feminism, not what the world is telling you to take. What do you think as a woman? So the more customized the thinking became, I think so, Preeta, it all evolved parallelly. When I became a writer, I felt, I could write this one or two stories, but I would say I was exactly like Kinjal. I wrote some stories and said, I don't like these stories. They are not really what I want to say. Hai kuch isme, but wo nahi hai. Then you go in search of those. So as I went parallelly, I found worldview. I started refining thoughts. I started reading, then writing better, then editing. So all happened parallel.
I'll tell you, when I write, I mostly do poetry, but whenever I write my free prose or so story or whatever, it's always from my it's always personal to me. It's my stories, my experiences, everything else. How do you actually, because there's so many wonderful writers out there, they just write fiction which has nothing in relation to them. They may force something of theirs, because how can you not? You are writing it. So to have that kind of objectivity and to, I don't know whether it comes down to personality, because when you feel things deeply, I don't know how to separate that from whatever else you're doing, or whether it just, you can probably train your mind or exercise yourself into kind of being objective. I have still not gotten to that part of the technical bit of writing, but has that been your journey? Like when you started writing, was that your journey where you felt, okay, I'm too, whether are you too far removed from the story or you're too into it? And so how you have managed to create that for yourself? And how long has this been writing journey for you? Like how long have you been writing now?
Right. See, I've been writing for 12 years because I've been started as a short story writer when I left my corporate job. I was in e-learning. Okay, so I was not too far away from writing or words, but not creative writing. And see, I must say this, Preeta, you seem to be deeply engaged in life. You look like that. You look like that. And that's why not always do you need to read, because you're reading life. You're reading life. You're thinking about, you're questioning it all the time. And I think all on this forum are doing that. And that's why books reading is important. Yes, no doubt, but not all the time. What if your answers are quenched just by meeting a person, or just by remembering an old incident and understanding it in contemporary times? Sometimes I understand my childhood now. That's the funniest part of it, right? Why should we understand the past now in the present?
No, you do relate. You do relate.
Yeah. And some things about your parents that didn't make sense then make sense now. So isn't that reading? That is reading. That's a different kind of reading. I think there is a point wherein you will write all that you have experienced. Like I did that with poetry. My earlier books, like Paper Asylum, is so full of it's so autobiographical in that sense. 4 Degrees was my first raw book of poetry when I was a raw poet of sorts. But I finished saying what I had to say, what I felt like saying through memory, past, present, future. Then it was like your curiosity about the world and humanity and the society at large is what you resonate with and connect it in conjunction to your own journey. So you find other characters, and then you broaden your scope also of having more characters and more stories that are not you. So that's how you move, and I'll tell you, gradually that's what will happen. If it's not already happened with you, it will. After you're done with your catharsis, saying all that you had to say about your life, you'll be like, okay, now what? I've said everything I have to say, but I still want to write. I still want to explore. Then you would have to go to the other character. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All the best on the journey.
Thank you so much. You also.
What all do you write, Preeta?
I'm a content writer. Like you said, you were in e-learning, so it's not something I enjoy doing. I'm just doing it because it's my job.
Did she get?
Yes, I think we have lost her for the time being. Yeah. Rochelle, are you going to read a story from the
Oh
book?
yes, I think I must read at least one small page.
Yeah,
Banta hai.
not small piece, a nice
Oh.
one.
You want a
Hello?
full? Oh, yeah, yeah. Please, please. Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think it was my end, right? The net.
Yes.
It was at
Yes.
my end. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And so whatever stories, I have had a few articles which has been published, but they were
Okay.
mostly non-fiction articles on parenting, on other stuff, on entrepreneurship and stuff like that. But I have been dreaming of writing fiction, so I have just written like a few fictional short stories which are still sitting in my journal. I have not let it out
Wonderful.
because
Wonderful.
I hate it. Like Kinjal said, that she, like, for me, I
Oh
find
yeah, we all go through that. We all go.
yeah,
That's an important process. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, I think so, because sometimes when you do write, and especially with my poetry thing, I sometimes feel like an imposter because I feel like, oh my god, I'm not a poet. I can't call myself a poet. This is just some shit that I write for myself. And but
I
then
think
there was
we all go through this. So don't
somebody said a very wonderful thing. I'm not sure you. I'm sure as writers, you all must have heard it also, because before I even started calling myself a writer, I used to hate calling myself a writer because I'm like, what? I'm not a writer. I just write. Anybody can write. But somebody mentioned that if the thought has ever crossed your mind of you ever wanting to be a writer, you are a writer.
Mm.
If the thought has ever crossed your mind of
Yes.
ever
Yes.
wanting to be a
Absolutely.
poet, you are a poet.
Yes.
So I have kind of embraced that now. So when somebody asks me, I said I do poetry. I don't say, I still not am strong enough to say that okay, I'm a poet, because that's like such a sure shot, like 100%, like a
And
nail on the head.
you can take your time. Self definition is all about taking your time.
Yeah, so I kind of do that. But yeah, I've been meaning to. In fact, there's been so many stories churning in my head, and the process of kind of putting it down has been so overwhelming that I kind of think if I start writing all these wonderful stories in my head, will all go away when they go in the ink and paper, and they will just vanish, and somehow will lose the charm that is still in my head. So that's kind of very, very self, I
So
guess.
I want to wish you a very good journey and of both
Thank you
writing
so
and
much.
reading and editing. So all the best.
So sweet. Thank you so much. And same to you. I'm looking forward to reading your books now.
And do send me some of your published work.
Oh, I will. Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure. So sweet. Thank you so much. I will. Thank you.
Rochelle,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I have a
Hi.
quick
Hi.
question. So you did bring up the fact that as writers we face cliches, and that's been one of my biggest writer's block, I would say. And I only recently jumped back into writing. But for me, it's like bad excess where you have to get over the whole thing and be on that journey to overcome that. So what would you recommend to do to get over
Yeah.
cliches?
So I just want to ask you, Girija, your cliches are to do with the components of story, as it to say cliched characters or phrases. What is the cliche?
Could be both, but mainly characters, character development or characterization.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So then this is a bigger level of cliche. So like this is not a small phrase like a snow-capped mountain, which you can always later get your original thing. For characters not to come to you as stereotype. First of all, observe people more, engage more with people, form independent opinions free from jargon or judgment. Try to be neutral. Sometimes because it's a character problem, I'm saying, because it's characterization problem. um, I have a friend who's very judgmental. Everything is black and white for this guy. Oops.
Yeah.
Just a sec, okay? I don't.
Yeah.
A friend who's very judgmental when he's fighting or he's trying to fight for his corner. It's very black and white. And I tell him as a storyteller, "Hey, maar khayega yaar, tu maar khayega," because tera characters bhi aise black and white hoga. Because human beings are all in gray. So the characters are also always between rationality and irrational, and they are everything. They are us. So one thing is, if you think, okay, I'm not saying I don't know you, Girija, so I'm just giving you tips like off my hat. Unless we sit for a coffee together. So what you do is definitely try to keep as much neutrality as you can. Do not judge, even if you can judge a person. Don't judge. if they're doing something very irritating, also bring it to neutrality and just watch them anthropologically, watch them neutrally. So that's one thing. Observe people, engage with people without bias, without prejudice, without judgment. And even if there's something annoying about them, you do not judge it, because it will help you get that whole balance with gray characters. And whether man, woman, whatever, don't judge. Just watch their patterns. That's one thing you can do. Secondly is read books which have very strong characters. Like don't read a lot, but read few books that have very strong characters. You could just do one Google search and find readers' surveys of where they say this character stood out for us. They always say that about Madame Bovary, or they say that about Lolita, for example. Or different characters. So read few of them. Also do an exercise on archetypes. We have character archetypes. You must try to study archetypes and find them. Do this whole exercise of finding archetypes in your life. Try to have fun with characters, and also fun in both ways. One is accidental fun, where you just meet people and all, and one is organized fun, where you will search for an archetype. Like yesterday I was thinking about the trickster character, the trickster archetype, because the trickster archetype is a very interesting archetype. I heard that the trickster had a very bad childhood. That's why they become very mean in adulthood, and they're always hoodwinking others. But it has to come with a deep wound of a childhood negligence. So it's not trauma, it's childhood negligence that has made them mean. And the trickster is a very interesting character or archetype. So think about where you would find a trickster. I am searching for a trickster, I tell you. No, just kidding. But so do a lot of character work. Maybe you can also do one more thing. Girisha, are you still there? Yeah, because you had got frozen in between. You can do one more thing. If you're writing a story, try to even write inner monologues of each character to understand the character better. For example, tell me the name of one of your characters.
So I'm doing poetry right now.
Okay.
So it's a female character called Miss Strawberry Legs.
No, but you're doing poetry, then I think it's covered. You have any piece of fiction from which you could tell me a character?
Not really, no.
No.
Sorry.
Okay, so if you take any character from there, do a little character in a monologue. So let the character talk in first person to you, like it's sitting in front of the coffee table and telling you their tale, telling you their inner feelings and wounds, and you'll understand the character. Then you'll get it right. Yeah, wo block chala jayega. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much. This is helpful.
All the best.
I'll definitely try all of these.
Yes. All the best.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, so I think I should read something, right?
Yes, you have to read something.
Okay. So Arun, I would read from Salad only because somehow or the other, gaon ki yaad aa gayi, Goa ki yaad aa gayi. Okay. Because I think this is the time when I would be in Goa actually, having those mankurats. Okay. So Salad. I'll preamble the story because I'm not reading the whole story. Yeah, as Arun would have wished.
How many words are there? How many words are there?
See, it's like it's a 6-page story here. So
So around 6 pages, the 300, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
1800, right?
It would be something like 3,000 words.
3,000 words. You'd be very tired, right?
Not tired. I think you all would also be tired. Okay, let me read till the point that all are not dropping dead. And it's 3 o'clock, right? That's
yes. Yes.
Salad. Isabel's eyes brimmed with the memory of Goa's roads, vast green fields bordered with coconut trees, the church of St. Francis Xavier. But she yanked herself from her daydreams to concentrate on her chore. With a drill, she picked the choicest packets of Bombay duck, Bombay tea powder, Sukhi Sungta, royal halwa, bought from Bandra, especially for Milagreen auntie, Theo uncle, nieces Delna and Emily, and bundled them into the folds of her cotton dresses. Her bags were now bursting at their seams. She lifted them all to check if she could carry them without tiring. Soon, just tomorrow, she would be standing at the altar of Milagri's Saibin at St. Jerome's Church, then sauntering in the Mapsa market for kokum sola, sausages, dried mango, coconut, vinegar, feni, jackfruit. A bus ride later, that familiar sea breeze would stab at her nostrils with its salty, intoxicating smell. She could dip her rheumatic feet in the Morgin beach waters for her first saltwater bath of the year. She would taste her Goya's river sweet and wholesome water. Isabel's mouth went dry now. Her humid home in Kalyan with its creaking ceiling fan felt unbearable, whereas the Seoli village home, nestled in jackfruit tree foliage, seemed to be waiting for her, calling out to her. Isabel counted her savings again, rubbing the notes to see that they didn't stick together. She had saved enough, 10,000 rupees, for this month-long trip to her native place. 6-year-old Sharon jumped up and down over the sofa. Pai ko yahan, Mai? He not coming? She asked in her melodious baby voice. Na Gopai, his work is not finished, said Isabel, looking at her baby as she settled at the edge of the sofa with a half-chewed Mari biscuit. Sharon was adopted. Isabel and Henry had waited for 11 years, praying to every saint in every church, with votives and vows, until one night Isabel had a divine dream of adoption. A night later, Milagrin auntie called from Goa to say she was in possession of a newborn baby. Sharon was born to a restless teenager who had gone to Lisbon to study and had returned pregnant. The teenager's parents hid her until the baby was born. It was fortunate that they trusted Milagrin, and she in turn passed on the baby to someone who needed it the most. Everyone was happy, and most of all Isabel. She was finally a mother at 45. She loved her daughter more than anyone could have loved theirs. Sharon was not just an answer to motherhood, but also to years and years of emptiness, to everything in Isabel's imagination in a delicious Goan Portuguese way. Sharon was the cause for Isabel's fountain of love to find way, to not stay engorged and stagnant, thereby suffocating her. Love, when it was too much, had to flow somewhere. Swishing around now in her silk dress with lace collars and puffed sleeves, Isabel murmured 3 Ave Marias and Our Fathers. She crossed a heart in front of the house altar, then tugged Sharon along with their baggage and locked the door. She left the keys with the neighbors for Henry and set out to Thane station for the Netravati Express. Henry would come home late. He couldn't join them to Goa, nor see them off at the station. He had a new job as a waiter at the Taj Hotel Colaba, and getting leave or leaving early was out of the question. Selma Colasso stood on a red hillock in front of a big white bungalow overlooking the Anjuna River. In her floral couture dress, her tresses talking to the wind, she looked like a goddess emerging from moist earth. Under her straw hat, her face was flushed pink. She could have passed for a European woman. Madam, great river view, said the broker, Mr. Shah. And the beach is nearby here only, at the backside. Have you ever come to Goa before? It is a paradise. Once people come, they never go. Selma rolled her eyes. She was Goan by heart, skin, bone, blood, and dream. But she wasn't about to illuminate this bloke. 20 years ago, she had lost her ancestral house to an uncle who thought a building would look better on the land of a childhood, where mangoes fell to sand, where dragonflies buzzed over shrub, where cashew seeds were roasted to crisp skins in the backyard. All of it gone, eaten up by an ugly building. Now, as Selma wanted was a piece of land in her my days, to safekeep her memories. Wasn't it so that in one's 30s, one felt the urge to return to the womb of all first loves, the cravings and whirlpools of all things past? From the hillock, Selma surveyed the mackerel clouds in a blue sky, motorists winding through the green roads, coconut, tamarind, and bamboo trees whispering in the bhat. She watched the Portuguese imprints still stenciled in villas around, in the architecture of distant churches, one saint at every mile, and in the Como perched atop every house. This land was not just sun, beach, sand, women, drinks, and partying, not just the timeliness in trees, where breathing slowed down naturally. It was culture, history, story, prayer, faith, language, labor, love, and lore. Selma watched red mud trickle down the hillock on which she stood and held back an urge to grab some of it. If you want, we can give you a better location, said Mr. Shah. What could be better than this, said Selma. It's heaven in every corner, isn't it? These local people are dirty villagers, mumbled Mr. Shah. Somewhere where we can give you beautiful beach view, sky view, river view, sea view. What's wrong with the local people again? Selma stopped midway from gritting her teeth. But it wasn't worth it. She turned away saying, I like this bungalow. It's well within my budget. I shall tell you in a day or two. All right, madam. Then will it be full down payment? I will call you. She nodded. Yes, yes, yes. Never mind the jerk. This bungalow befitted her dreams. It had the gambol of the Anjuna River, a quaint teen-taw on the other side, and a neighbor's home in the new bungalows and old houses, with fowls, pigs, goats, and dogs strolling in sun-dappled courtyards. She inhaled the newness of the bungalows, cemented tiles, the gluggy smell of river water, the muskiness from the shell-windowed houses across the road. Things seemed just perfect. She returned to a heritage homestay at Vagator and phoned Javier, her husband, a Frenchman who was in love with all her obsessions and hence in love with her. I will take a walk to this place one last time before finalizing the deal, said Selma. I want to see how it looks in the night. Next part. Isabel stood in her baggy swimwear that had worn off its colors. It had been bought 6 years ago from Baga Beach. She wore black leggings underneath. Mama, you look like a lollipop, squealed Sharon. Why, bye, laughed Isabel. Peach top, black legs, said Sharon, giggling as her curls flew over her chubby face. Mother and daughter ran around the waves, jumped over them, splashed and slept in the sifting wet sands. Then Sharon suddenly said, Mama, potty. Oh God, I told you to make before leaving. Sharon looked at her mother anxiously. Come off now. Isabel looked around. There was a row of huts in the distance with restroom painted in bright red. It was near some makeshift restaurant shack. They trudged along hurriedly over the wet and dry sand mounds. With Sharon ensconced in one of the Indian WCs, Isabel shouted out, Finished? Her question echoed in the small bathroom. Not coming, sang Sharon. Isabel turned on the taps in the basin, then checked the taps in the other two toilets. Saiba pao. Udokatsna. Let me find some water now. You make, I will come. Isabel went to the adjoining shack to find a mug, bottle, drum of water, anything. Hello? Kaun aasa re? Hello? Patrao koi ha? She peered from the patio into the inner room that was veiled in darkness. Hello? Kaun ha? Patrao ga raha ha? She nearly stepped into the dark room when its door suddenly banged shut against her face with so much force it couldn't have been the wind. The silence behind that door and from that room was eerie and unsettling. Isabel's skin gathered goose pimples under the sand that stuck to it. Something was wrong about this house. There was somebody inside, but nobody was answering, even though they had heard and seen her. Isabel went back to the toilet. Bye, Zale. Bye. You finished? Isabel pushed open the door of the WC. No Sharon. She pushed open the other doors of the toilets. No Sharon there too. She ran out looking around the shop and shut. The door of that house was still locked. Isabel ran out of the beach screaming, Kui gele moze bye. Sharon, Sharon, bye, baby. She ran far off. Oh my God. She ran back into the toilet. She screamed. She flung open the doors again. She looked for a toy that Bai was playing with. But did she have a toy in her hand today? A spade or that ducky? No, that was yesterday at the beach, wasn't it? Isabel looked around and around. Did she wear her Vanu? Blue slippers or black? No, that was left at home, weren't they? Where are you, Bai? Sharon? Oh my God. What was she wearing? That pink dress? No, peach dress, cream dress, yellow dress. Isabel ran over the house and banged the door hard, but there was no response. Surely Sharon had finished her job and gone out onto the beach to look for her. Isabel ran toward the right of Morja Beach. Hey, tu daktule chedua polele? She raised her hand up to her waist. Edde. Some drenched teenagers nodded. Isabel looked as far as she could on the road in the narrow exit lanes of the beach. She mistook a dog in the distance for a little girl sitting. She ran in the other direction to the left of the beach. She ran back into the toilet, shouting, wailing, screaming. Should we stop here?
Absolutely not.
No,
You
no, no,
cannot.
please
Okay,
carry on.
Okay.
would be crime.
Are you tired of reading?
No.
Yeah.
No. I just wanted to check. This is the cliffhanger check that scriptwriters do. Okay.
It would be a crime now to stop.
Okay. Next part. After some caldo verde, spicy sausages, pomfret curry over steamed rice, squid fried in rechado, and mighty gulps of wine, Selma strolled into the Mapsa market. She watched the shops lined with everything that she would love to take back home and savor until her next visit. She put packets of dodol, bibinka, pinagri, and dos into her shopping bag and fought off thoughts on how much more luggage space she would need for extra packets of dry mango, sauna, sausages, cashew seeds, port wine, toddy-topped coconut, vinegar, Goa coconut oil, feni, and kokum juice. She stopped midway between all this to listen to the music flowing around her. Ge go by, sawai deta. Une kor padegal. Tujer he sadi polele murgolo tolo. I'm going to skip a bit now because this is all about Selma and her going walking down memory lane, but it will take on a lot of pages. And yeah, I'll just move to the next one, wherein she goes to this bungalow. Okay. See, the evening fell into the dark. So Selma has come home. She's basically unpacked all the market bags and everything. And the evening fell into the dark spell of night. Nostalgia was like an eternal drug. Years could pass by with it. Did you check on the house then? Asked Javier over the phone. No, but I went to the Mapsa market today. I bought a lot of things. I better go tonight, she said. Saying so, Selma set out of her room. She had been through the good and the bad offices of realtors and by now knew what they sold and how. She had learned to discern through their sticky adjectives. Goa was nothing but a whore to them. But Selma stuck to these realtors because they were better in leading her to the property she wanted, better than those e-portals of word-of-mouth recommendations. She now walked into the dark lanes of a soon-to-be white bungalow. Point noted, there are no street lamps. Second, the gravel is loose and shifty. I would have to bargain for a pakka road. Point 3, no dispensary, not even a pharmacy in the distance, not a small groceries shop. Point 4, point 5. The next part. Everything passed in a blur. Isabel was in a bus and the windows were a blur. She could see Sharon in every little or older girl. Every person knew where her Bai was. Encouraged by this thought, I implore you to obtain for me, O gentle and loving Saint Anthony, my buy, my buy, my buy, she whispered in breathless repetitions. Inspector Shushant Mapsekar was trying to calm Isabel down at the police station. At least tell me what happened. Do you suspect anyone? Where are your relatives? Isabel spoke with succinctness. A whir was surrounding her, and the only way it could not get in her through was her voice, which like an arrow would shoot out. The police were the bowstrings. Her voice would reach Sharon. Isabel told them all she knew. They set out in a police jeep. There was somebody who spoke from inside Isabel, using her voice in a smart and determined way. That was the only way they would find her by. They went to the beaches, invaded shacks and houses, asked us 100 questions, showing Bai's photo a million times. The countryside was blurring. Only the jeep's dashboard was in focus with the oncoming road. The day stretched into a short afternoon, a long evening, and the evening into an eternity. Much against her relatives' wishes, force, pleading, Isabel caved in, giving in to her feelings. Like a fortress to a hurricane. The evening had come. The darkness had too. Bai was scared of the dark. Wherever she was, if not anything else, this quiet was going to kill her. A jungle was unfurling. Inspector Shushant dropped Isabel at her Seoli home. You rest a bit. We are on a nighttime crackdown. You will receive word in the morning. Take some rest. Please find her. My bye, 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 Isabel cried. Milagrin auntie, Theo uncle, Delna and Emily held her as she looked up at the sky. The moon was full and round. So round, it wasn't even real. Baby Sharon woke up on a large white bed. She was hungry. Her head was spinning. She mumbled, Mama, Mama, my pie. Her eyes were sticky, as if glued like paper in her craft class. And uncle stood at the door. He had golden hair and no shirt, only pants with squares on them. She sat up. Where am I? I want Mama. The uncle switched on the lights. Everything was white and bright. Sharon blinked. Come, let's go for a bath. Take off your clothes, the uncle said. Where's my koi, huh? Sharon began to cry, rubbing the wet glue off her eyes. The uncle lunged over the bed and grabbed her by her arms. With tender force, he brought her down. I have chocolates and ice cream for you. Come, remove your clothes. We should have a bath first. I like clean babies. The uncle sat on the bed nodding. Sharon looked at him, his golden hair over his pink skin. She began removing her frock. Mai had taught her to put on and remove her clothes like big people did. You're a beautiful girl, you know. Lovely curls, black eyes, honey skin, tiny lips. Are you hungry? Do you want a lollipop? Want to suck on something? The uncle asked. Sharon stared at him from behind her tears. The uncle roamed his eyes over her body. He put out his little finger and smiled. Come, let's bathe. He checked the nail on his middle finger. He had clipped it yesterday, so it should be okay for today. The next part, the last part. Selma stood in the car park of a soon-to-be white bungalow. The Anjuna River cavorted far into the night in its dark, fleshy ink. The moon shone, bleached and full-faced. It matched the patio tiles of the bungalow, showering it with further gleaming pearl. None of the night bulbs or tubes work, muttered Selma. I have to tell the broker that too. What about the neighbors? Does anyone live in these bungalows? On the right, on the left? It would be good to acquaint with them. Unlike the modern world that didn't believe in neighbor relationships, Selma always liked to know her neighbors. She consulted her watch. 10 p.m. She walked onto the patio of the neighboring black-tiled bungalow. Late, I know, she thought. But what if I had had an emergency now, or in the middle of the night? When do neighbors come in handy? The doorbell startled Raymond. Who the hell? He furiously went to answer it, peering through the peephole. A woman stood outside with gleaming honey olive skin, chubby breasts. His resolve broke faster than the bolt on his door. Sorry, babe. I'd clearly told Martis not to send anyone without calling me first. I have 3 mobile phones. Of what use are they? I just can't see anyone today. Excuse me, I'm not, said Selma. I understand. How much? Wait here, I'll get the full amount. What's your name? I would definitely like to see you again. I never trouble a lady, especially one as arousing as you. But this isn't the right time. Selma shook her head in dread. She had heard the woods were beautiful, the jungle. But as beautiful as they were, as full of the smells of earth and home, filled with good things and beings, fairies and angels, her mother would often tell her it was always filled with beasts and wolves. If you were Red Riding Hood, you had to know the wolf. If you knew the wolf, you had to know how to escape it. A road would open up somewhere when the wolf turned his head. A street, a path, a light, a window, a door. My, and screaming at the top of the shrillest voice in one clean and fast dash, Sharon ran from the bathroom straight into Selma, who was turning to go away. Thank you.
It's lovely. It's lovely.
Thank you. This got a shortlist at Fundasa Orient Short Story Competition that Goa had. This was one of the shortlists.
Beautiful story.
Yeah.
So much
The
of
book's link
detailing.
will be shared in the group. Please buy.
I'm just a little sorry that you missed the pages about the nostalgia about Goa. I would have loved those.
Yeah, but because I think I wouldn't
Yeah,
have
I
managed.
understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's all about
Time constraints. Yeah.
yeah, it's all about the music of the Mapsa market. Thank you so much, Dr. Helen. Thank you. That passage was all about the whole music of Konkani and the bass and all the how intoxicating the market is, na? The local markets, intoxicating with that language. So, and the same would be probably for every place you visit. The smells of those raw fruit and the language and the vendor talking and probably you eating a little bite of that fruit. So it was all that for Selma. Yeah.
It was very vivid.
Yeah, it was as a storyteller also difficult to kind of wrap my whole writing around it because it also made me go through emotions, of all kinds. Yes.
So well you have ended, Rochelle. So well you have ended.
Yeah.
And I think you just find these endings, okay, Arun, you don't know them in the beginning. Most of the time, it's your explorative path through the wilderness. You'll find it. Yeah.
Imagery was wow, and the detailing, it didn't feel like it was written for a short story.
Yeah.
Like it was never ending. It was beautiful.
Thank you for saying that. I think one of the reasons, Preeta, is because once you practice enough of poetry and haiku, you are so cautious with words, really doing their bit. So you're very cautious with them. Yeah. You let them work for you as partners into what you have to say. Yeah.
In fact, this is the first time actually I've been hearing about the usage or technicality of haiku usage in prose writing or in storytelling. And it's fascinating because haiku in itself is like a new, not really a new, but fairly a new concept to me as a poet, because I've been writing a few bit, but I'm learning on the way of how to actually, so many new things have been haiku, nonnets, and all these new things I've been learning about the poetry. But first time I've heard from your mouth as to how to, and that makes so much of sense because when you're writing, almost to have that poetic feel to reading is what kind of keeps you engaged with the storytelling format, right?
And also as a haiku practitioner, because I've done workshops with Pune Writers Group, actually, maybe you could check the recordings. But one of the key things about haiku is because it's classical.
Yeah.
So because only in, let's say, morning mist, one image in 2 words,
Yeah.
because of that economy, you start getting used to economizing your words
Yeah.
for the right things then.
Oh, you're right. Because it's all about showing and not telling. So kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
it becomes very valid for you to actually incorporate that. And somehow, right now that you mention it, becomes like a conscious practice. But I'm sure that with age and practice and writing and writing and writing, you kind of, it just becomes like something.
And
in the
one more
back
thing, what I would say to you and all the others here, na, I know you all might be doing it. It's not like you're not. I'm just adding that, articulating it.
Yeah, sure.
When you are, in an environment, always be aware of all the senses that you're consuming the environment. Don't only because it is beautiful. Let's say a site is beautiful. Don't forget how you're feeling on the skin.
Yeah.
Don't forget what sound you're hearing. Sometimes we
smells you're
let
smelling.
we let one layer overpower the other. So when we're writing, we don't remember the other sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So live more,
Rochelle?
basically sense more. Yeah.
Rochelle,
Yes.
probably now we have to let you go because it's almost
Oh,
it's 3
absolutely.
o'clock
And you know
already.
what?
So,
I would forget about that festival. See, look at
We'll
me.
take a pic.
Yeah,
we need to take a picture.
let's take a photograph and
Everyone, please turn on your cameras.
Maybe I will do this. Okay.
Yeah.
yes.
Shankar, Pradnya, Nirupama, Prabdeep. Okay.
Thank you.
Rochelle, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I had 2 questions during the first part that you've answered in your story itself. Ki how to make a city come alive or a place come alive, and how do you compartmentalize different mediums that you write in. But I think you don't. It blends in, like there is story in your
Yeah.
poem.
If you're asking me
Prose is
about
poetic. Yeah.
I just take whatever works, like anywhere, because I think underground there is no art form segregation. There is poetry in cinema. There is cliffhangers in short stories. You could just borrow from different. Yeah. What about the city? What did you glean of the first point?
Nee, the how to make a place come alive. That I always have a problem with, because to write about Pune, I feel it is a bit difficult. I've tried a lot of times. It's
How about Gotham City, Sumit? Have you written about Gotham?
I think I know Gotham better than I know Pune.
Pune's underbellies. Okay.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. It was fun, and thank you, Arun, for conceptualizing the idea of this, to have this session.
Thank you so much, Rochelle. It was really enlightening.
Yeah.
I love you being so insightful, and it shows.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm intrigued. I'm completely intrigued by you now. So, get ready for some stalking. I'll
Wow.
probably be doing
And please, if you review, then review. If you do review, do review. Yeah.
Yes.
And I would wish all of you a wonderful writing journey. I know you all are writing a lot of things. So all the best to the submitting, to everything, to submittable, to everything. Have fun. And I hope to read your works also, published, unpublished, anything will do. Thank you so much, Pradnya. Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
If you want to start,
Thanks, Arun.
stalking
Thanks, Kinjal.
Rochelle, you
Sumit.
can do it at 4 o'clock today
Yeah,
on
4 o'clock,
Samyukta
yeah.
Facebook page live.
Again, go
You're
there.
stalking.
I'm
Go there.
reading my translated poetry. I'm reading some.
Where is that happening?
I put it on a Pune
Okay, I'll check it.
writers group,
I'll
yeah.
check it, Kinjal. I'll
All
check
right.
it.
We'll
Thank
see
you.
you there. Best
Thanks
of
a
luck.
lot.
Yeah, I'll
Thanks a lot,
meet you
Arun.
there.
Rochelle.
Thank you, Rochelle.
All the
Yeah.
best. All the best.
Rochelle, thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank